Yeah. So, in what ways? So, I guess I've been reflecting on in what ways has that also, you mentioned self-care, which has been really important for us during this period of time. I've
Mm.
also explored, um, this idea of enlarging the context in which I see myself and I see us as humans living. So it's not sufficient for me to kind of embed myself within my family, although that's quite lovely. And we all had perhaps more profound family interactions during this time of COVID. But it's really prompted me to think about the larger global community. COVID was not an isolated event in one country, and it
Right,
continues
yeah.
to have devastating effects all over the world. So it also pointed to me that there's an evolution not only physiologically, there's an evolution of ideas. Even science has had to approach this period of time and change its way of thinking, its way of maybe bringing drug development in a more rapid speed, its way of understanding immunology. Um, but I've become more interested from a larger context about this idea of the emerging global community, the emerging global consciousness. Uh, Prior to the pandemic, I had the intimation of it, but it wasn't as embodied. It wasn't as real of a sense. Now I'm keenly interested in who are the people, what is the work that can be done to help us be connected to that emergence of global consciousness that I think is happening around us now. Because I have a sense that that's what's going to be helping guide our future, that that sense of the larger community, the human spirit, the rising of our aspirations. I'm beginning to think of it as providing us guidance through these difficulties.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all have a mission now, right? And just like COVID, which
COVID
is
has a mission as well.
uh,
Yeah.
COVID had a mission of tragic effect, but um, we're also staring at another tragic effect, and that could be the demise of our entire planet through lack of biodiversity and just plain oxygen. And that's to contemplate that. It's really makes me anxious, and I think it makes a lot of people anxious now. And working working with climate scientists, I've seen within a 10-year period now the change within them.
Yes.
They were basically all about the science, and they still have a lot of work to do because they'll never quite understand how nature works, right? But um, I heard their voices getting louder and their concern getting louder and the activism starting to show up, I guess about 5 years ago. It's 2022 now. So 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, it was always there. I mean, I've dealt with climate crisis anxiety for at least 30 years of my life, but it was just kind of floating out there in the back of everybody's mind, but now it's in the forefront. And I've noticed a change within the scientists themselves that, hey, they're seeing before everybody what's happening, and they are putting up the red flags. And we all need to stop and listen, because it's would be maybe not in our lifetime, but our children's lifetime. What are they going to be? That's what I think about. uh what will they be dealing with? Just trying to scrounge around for food, air, what? That's what's frightening. But
Right.
I do see a lot of hope, and a lot of things happening, change happening, adapting, and reading the science in a different way so that we can avoid the inevitable. And unfortunately, it's just from one industry that has brought us all down in a very short period of time, like what, 100 years? considering how long this planet has been floating around the sun.
Right.
So that's, I mean, when you think about that, that one specific topic about the oil industry and how it has trickled down into the whole, our country being very autocentric, thinking about cars, thinking about roads, all our money gets poured into all this one thing. And that needs to stop, because it's like the ship of fools. Was a painting that I was just in a seminar, and they were talking about the ship of fools, where they chopped down the last tree so that they could build their boat, but that was like the last tree, and that's the end of trees. So that's what we're looking at. We're like a
Not
ship
wise.
of fools.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, it goes back again to what we were pondering. How do we get better at change? If the finches got better at, as a species, in a way that allowed their survival, similarly, humans have to have the same charge. I remember at the time we were talking about some of the people who were studying the process of change, like Bob Keegan, in his book, The Immunity to Change. And he was describing how we actually have an inbuilt mechanism that prevents change from happening. We tend to push it away, right? And how do we overcome that tendency? But also, I remember at the time getting a chance to hear Nancy Abrams, who is a kind of a legal, she's a lawyer and a philosopher of science, and her husband, Joel Premack, who's an astrophysicist. They gave a TED talk, and they talk about really the process of change. They think people didn't readily change when presented with a set of facts, but they only change when they're offered a larger identity, a larger view of who they are. And
Wow.
I thought that was quite profound. I'm going to have a chance to kind of update with them and hear their latest thinking, but I thought it was a rather profound understanding. At least it's a working theory of how people change. If that's the case, then what is that larger identity, right, that we need to live into, which could potentially transform the world?